The information provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be construed as investment, tax, legal, or other professional advice. All opinions expressed by the host or guest are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of QP Consulting LLC or its affiliates. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Investing involves risk, including the possible loss of principal. Listeners should consult their financial advisor or other professionals before making any investment decisions. QP Consulting LLC is a registered investment advisor. Registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training. For more information, including our disclosures and Form ADV, please visit qp-consulting.com. Hello and welcome to The Jagged Path with Mark Ivsevich, where we talk about people, careers, the U.S. retirement system, and the many indirect ways people move through their working years towards retirement. Today we have Brianna Som, and Bri works at Priority Group as a client success manager. She currently lives in Indianapolis, and Bri is closer to the beginning of her retirement journey versus the end. But welcome to the show, Bri, and thanks for joining us.
Very glad to be here.
So I'm going to start with a little bit of background. And since we really don't know each other all that well, I typed into ChatGPT to get what ChatGPT thinks your favorite music would be. So we'll see if this is anywhere right. So it says, if we're talking about a mid-30s Midwestern woman who went to Purdue, that adds some flavor. Purdue grads often carry that Big Ten Midwest vibe, whatever that may mean. A mix of country roots, mainstream pop, and some alternative rock influences from college years in the early 2000s. So it's given me a list of some musicians. Why don't you tell me 1, 2, 3 musicians you like, and we'll see if ChatGPT knows you.
That's hard. I'm actually one of those people that is more genre and song style than actually knowing the artist, which is horrible to say, but is how I am.
That's okay.
So,
So what genres would you say you like?
yes, I am a country girl. I do have the roots in that. Rap as well. So the new style of country rap blend has become quickly one of my favorites. But
Okay.
I do like the pop and the R&B and kind of rock. But the country rap are my two favorites.
Okay, so here's what it said, and here's the stereotypes of Indiana. So it says country leaning, huge in Indiana. It gave Keith Urban, Carrie Underwood, Chris Stapleton, Zach Bryan. Do you like any of those four?
Not my usuals, no.
Okay. I would say I'm not really a country person. I do find Chris Stapleton wildly impressive. And then it says millennial pop icons, college soundtrack, Purdue, 2005 to 2010, Taylor Swift, especially early country to pop transition. I'm seeing a head shake here, folks. So this is an audio podcast. Kelly Clarkson, Pink, and John Mayer. I'm guessing those are all no's.
No, all no's for me.
And the last one, college area alt indie, big with the campus crowds, says the Fray, Mumford & Sons, the Lumineers, and Coldplay.
I like all of those.
Okay. So I guess the point is for those that are relying on ChatGPT to write script or get a feel for your audience, I would say that's maybe 50-50. So maybe AI is not taking over just yet. So tell us a little bit. You went to Purdue University. Am I correct in that?
I did. I went for my BA in visual communications, which is basically a large overview of marketing, advertisement, graphic design, web design, so on and so forth.
And did that degree lend itself to the job you do today at Priority Group?
It does. I started at Priority in 2012 as a graphic designer. And then was promoted to the promotions, which was kind of away from design, but I still heavily rely on that background for, branding, outfitting the company, creative concepts, solutions for customers, things like that.
And what about in terms of like cheering? Are you a big Boilermaker fan?
I'm a big fan. Yeah. I actually grew up in South Bend, which is Notre Dame. So I have, kind of a split personality for the two loves of my life. But yes, that is one of them.
So I was going to ask whether there's IU members in the family and if there's a house divided there, but it sounds like with the Notre Dame bit, that's, for the Mid-Atlantic people, there's some people that are not terribly geographically inclined, I've learned out here. So anyways, that South Bend's in the northern part of the state. My sister went to St. Mary's up there, actually. So I'd spent some time kind of college football Saturdays up there.
Yeah.
So, all right. And what about now on campus? Was the Boilermaker in terms of a drink, was that something that people did
Oh,
at
all the
Purdue?
time. So I served my entire way through Purdue. That's how I paid for my portion of college. At bars, B-dubs, a couple restaurants down there, and it was ordered frequently with Vegas
And
bombs.
for the
That was
for the uninitiated, what is the Boilermaker?
so the Boilermaker is like the most famous shot related to Purdue, and it's basically a blend of it's really not one of my favorites, but it's a blend of whiskey, like just whatever house whiskey, and then like a beer, like a light beer. So,
So you answered my question there, which is cheap whiskey,
yeah.
cheap
Yep.
beer. Do you like it? Myself, I can't get down with it. Never
Nope.
did. Don't get it.
No.
But I guess, once again, football Saturday, maybe I guess where people are
Quick
headed.
way to get drunk. Yep.
Um, That's right. Okay, well, let's move to kind of a little more around the money stuff. It's actually very helpful that you bartended, helped paid for expenses in college. What about what you do today? So, could you kind of describe to us what a client success manager is at Priority Group?
Yeah, so actually, my title is Vice President of Client Success, and in essence, I'm a little bit different than the majority of the managers. It's kind of been a position that has slowly become what it is through the years I've worked there, in terms of handling things kind of across all of our divisions. So Priority Group started in 1980 as a commercial printer, and it has 5 different divisions that are focused heavily on specific branding solutions, whether it's car wrapping, fleet wrapping, custom boxes, kitting fulfillment, promotional apparel and merchandise, obviously commercial printing, and then imaging, videography, studio things as well. So I manage the promotional and apparel division, but because I started there as a designer, I still heavily lead that part of our company as well, in terms of all of our own branding, kind of our guidelines, what's allowed, what's not allowed, the new and creative things we do to outfit our team. Um, and then additionally, just because of my tenure there, I've been given a lot of assignments that are, fallen down from the CEO and the other owner that own Priority Group together. So I end up handling a lot of customers, dealing with the management across all the divisions. And then lastly, I handle all of their events. So anything that is a major event for Priority Group in general, I am typically the one leading, planning, creative, invites, social media campaigns, anything and everything that could possibly be needed, down to what I say, the tampons in the ladies' restroom. So it's very in depth, lots of details, lots of branding, lots of, mailings, letters, invites, creative, outfitting the teams. So,
So there's a whole lot there, and obviously a lot of different verticals of which Priority Group is part of. So if someone is interested that's listening that heard something piqued their interest, whether it was promotions or print material or car wraps, whatever the case may be, what's the best avenue for them to pursue reaching out to Priority Group?
so they can reach out to me, and I can either give you my email here, or we can plug that in somehow. But that or prioritygroup.com. It shows all of our divisions, and you can click on the division you're interested in, and then there's a little "Hey, reach out to us, contact us" section. If you click that, it submits, and then it emails all of the managers involved for that division.
Perfect. Okay. And in terms of your compensation at work, you can disclose as much or as little as you like, but are you compensated via salary, a commission, a bonus, some combination of all three?
So I am heavily salary. I do have my cell phone covered and have had that covered for years, which I consider a little bit of a bonus because I don't have to pay that. Um, and then additionally, occasionally based on work performances, or if an event went really well or things like that, or if I just had a really good month in my own division, I will get a bonus here or there.
And in terms of how you've handled, so to the retirement side of the benefits package, Priority Group offers a 401k plan. That's how we met. I'm the advisor on that
Yep.
plan. And I don't know if you knew this, but I'm an Indianapolis native originally. And the way I know the owners of the company is it goes all the way back to high school
Oh,
football.
no, I
So,
did not know
so
that.
yeah,
Very,
so a long, long time ago. But in terms of your participation in the 401k plan, when did you start that and why did you start that? What was the kind of impetus to get you moving?
yeah, so I started that when I first started at Priority. I wasn't obviously in a relationship or anything and had, needed to have that begin in terms of supporting myself for the future. So I started a 401k, and at the time I was making nothing. Nowadays what would not be livable at all. And then as my income started to grow and the position started to change and I got promotion, I kind of tried to adjust that accordingly. Um, so that's kind of how it began. And really, my mother just always drilled it into us that you need to have a 401k, you need to start planning for retirement. So that was something where I just said, okay, checked it off the list. I've got one, move on.
And in terms of the kind of the depth of review or analysis, you're in the plan. Is it something that you look at frequently? Is it something that you set and leave alone? Is it something that you wish you maybe monitored a little bit more? What's kind of your temperature there?
Yeah, I wish I definitely participated a little bit more and monitored it closer over the years. I think at the time I was so focused on my bring home week to week, to be more comfortable, that I didn't adjust as much as I probably should have as I received those raises and started moving up the ladder. So it's definitely something that now is becoming more of a heavy, hey, I need to start to really focus on this a little more.
So this is according to Fidelity. In the fourth quarter of 2024, the average millennial, which obviously that's a really big age group, but has a balance of $67,300. So that's people that are age 29 to 44. Where do you fall in line with that? Do you think you're the average? Are you a little above? Or are you a little below in terms of what you've saved to
In
date?
my 401k or in my own savings.
It can be a combination of the two, really.
I'm above for a
Okay.
combination of the two.
And in terms of if you can think back to this, doesn't have to tie into what you do at your company or salary or anything else. Is there a financial move you've made that you've thought to yourself, wow, that was really smart. I did that. And then the flip end of that coin, have you ever done something that you're like, man, that was really dumb. It didn't work out or just was unfortunate. Maybe you got hustled out of money somehow.
Yeah. So, really smart decision was I was looking for a new roommate a couple years back. I guess it was 2018 at this point, and had a really sweet deal with an apartment complex when I had the two bedroom with the roommate. Realized after that kind of went south that I didn't want to deal with a roommate anymore. I was tired of it. Um, Started to look for an apartment and realized that month to month they were 1,200, 1,500, 1,800, just kind of extremely high. So my boyfriend made a recommendation to start looking for homes. And at first I was like, that's crazy. There's no way, I don't have a down payment. How would I do this? Um, and then found a home that was well below my, budget, purchased it. It's a condo and it's now worth almost twice what I paid for it. So I've got a lot of equity in it. I also refinanced during COVID to get my interest rate way down. So I had only owned the home for 2 years at that point, but I refinanced anyway. So those two were kind of the best decisions I could have made. Um, to tie into that, I own my vehicle and I have for a long time. Don't I don't buy into the notion that you have to have the newer, bigger, badder car despite when your career increases or your income increases. I kind of think that's a decision that really hurts people month to month because car payments are extreme. So I save a lot of money by not having a car payment. I drive a car that's 10 years old, but I don't really care. Um,
Yeah, I would agree with that. From what I've seen, one of the things that is a frequent mistake people make is they look at what payments they can
yeah,
afford versus maybe the total cost of the car over the life of the car. Same thing when it comes to housing. And I think people got artificially used to really hyper low interest rates that you mentioned refinancing in 2018. You're probably, unless things really go poorly, you're probably never going to see those rates again in your lifetime, and that's okay. So that's great. I can kind of I feel some similarity on the housing front that I had a roommate. Roommates are great when you're trying to budget and live in a big city, but at a certain point, roommates can be kind of annoying. And ours was a little different. That the landlord, it was a condominium, sold it out from underneath us, and so at that point we had to make a move, and it was kind of you just I don't. I don't know how you felt, but it was like, I don't really think I'm an adult yet. Why am I buying a house? This was at age 24.
Yeah, and I was
Um,
even older and I still felt that way. Um,
yeah,
so
yeah.
no, I agree.
So, so yeah, I think maybe the lesson there for any listeners, especially younger listeners, is that these movements, life comes at you fast. I think is what it says in Ferris Bueller's Days Off. That there's before you know it, you're kind of in that adult age, even though you don't feel like it. So feel comfortable asking questions and being willing to kind of dip your toe in the water and make those big financial decisions.
I did. I
Um,
actually called my brother-in-law and I said, "This is what I have in my bank. This is what the house is. This is my income. You know, do you think I can afford this?" So we looked at projection of my income in the future and kind of where I was and how much the down payment was. And he was like, pull the trigger. He's like, it takes everything from your savings account, but I think it's worth it. And you'll make up the difference. And he was right.
well, that's great. What about a financial mistake? Is there anything you feel like you look back on and you'll wake up in a cold sweat thinking about it at some point 10 years later?
I really struggled with when I chose my degree. I think it was a big mistake, and I say this to people nowadays. I think designers are grossly underpaid. I think it's a demanding job. It's mentally exhausting. You end up doing way more than the position actually calls for, i.e., social media, concepting, event plan, all these things that really shouldn't be under your purview. It's the biggest mistake I have, that I think I should have gone and used my talents. I was a 4.0 student in high school and at Purdue, and I think I should have used them for an area where financially I would have been better off in the long run.
And are there other things you would do, you could do in terms of like professional development and that sort of thing? I'm struggling this with my kids now who are not quite high school and then high school junior year. So starting to think about that and almost encouraging them, hey, it's great that you have an idea of what you're thinking of doing with your life, but I didn't know what I wanted to do even before I was graduating. I mean, I had a job fortunately, but as I was walking out the door from college, like I was still trying to figure it out. Um, I feel like that can be a really tricky decision for people at such a early stage in their life too to try to figure out.
It is. It's like, hey, you're still a kid, you don't know anything, and here, pick your life plan. Especially if you only had funding. I only had funding for a portion of my college for 4 years. And at the time, you had to walk in with a decision made, or you ended up a 5 year, and I knew I couldn't afford 5 years.
So when you were looking at college and evaluating that, and this could be relevant for people that have gone through this or have some debt or are looking at this for a child, did you graduate with some student loan debt? And is that still in the background, or have you been able to work your way through that if you did have debt?
So, I didn't actually get to take a lot of debt on because my father at the time, he made enough income that the state basically said, "Hey, you're only eligible for basically 3,000 a year," which is nothing. And
Gotcha.
so I ended up only with about 3,600 in debt and paid that relatively off in big chunks as fast as I could. So I do not have college debt that I'm dealing with. No.
Well, I think people, hopefully listeners are realizing why I had you on the call. One is um, I want to have people who are at the end of everything, kind of to look back on what they've done. I think it's a little trickier when you're on the front end getting started and saying, okay, I'm saving and I've got something saved. Your peak earning years are ahead of you, statistically, kind of your mid 50s. But what I've always told folks in group environments when we're doing education is that your expenses are also probably going to rise too. So your peak earning years are probably going to pair up with your peak spending years, um, and how difficult that can be as well. Um, what about so we talked about mistakes with majors, professionally what you're doing. What about a budget? Like, do you have something you look at either on a monthly, quarterly basis, or do you kind of ballpark it knowing roughly what you spend?
I ballpark it basically in order to know what I have to spend that month. I have a certain mindset of where I want to be in my savings account. And every week I throw money at it. I'm not once a month person, I'm a once a week person. Even with if I have any credit card bills, I make a payment every week, even if it's only $50 or 100 or 150 until it's back to zero. Um, and that kind of also dictates, if I had a big expenditure and I put it on my credit card. Um, week to week what I can spend because I'll spend less if I know I'm making a big payment to my credit card. So for me, it's more mental in terms of, hey, I want my savings to raise by this much. And if it's not getting there, I pull back on my spending. If I've got a surplus, then I know that I've got a little bit of extra, but then I also work in kind of, I travel a lot. So that's kind of my spending. So I kind of look at that and what I spend in a year and budget for that.
Okay. And that was going to be kind of as we wound up, I was going to ask you about, what are your hobbies? What does retirement look for you? It's probably not like the commercials on TV, that you see, but like where do you see yourself in 30 years? Like what would a successful journey be and a successful retirement for you?
Yeah, so for me, it would be being able to not work, support myself month to month, kind of the same lifestyle I live now, basically. So traveling a couple times a year, being able to pick up the occasional item here or there, affording repair here or there. I've had a lot of house repairs in the last few years, things like that, and each one, at a minimum is 2K plus. So, being able to have that money and not panic when I have to pull that. Um, Kind of things like that. My hobbies are traveling basically, so I do a lot of traveling, and I go overseas a lot, and I go to kind of obscure places, and I that costs more money than the average travel situation. So I want to be able to kind of continue that, but also understanding that the older I get, the more travel is going to be a little bit more difficult. So that's why I'm kind of going full steam while I'm young, traveling, and figure when I retire, I can pull back a little bit on that.
That's great. What's a location that surprised you that was you were kind of going in leery and you were like, wow, that was really amazing.
Penang. Penang was so raw. It was in Malaysia. Um, I went on a trip kind of around those areas and I went to Taipei in Thailand and you know, Qatar while I was over there and just kind of these random little areas and Penang was the rawest I'd been to in terms of it's not touristy, it's kind of authentic, it's unique the way they live. It's just a different world and it's really awesome to see that and experience that.
Great. I'm sure for listeners, they can add that one to their list because it doesn't probably isn't going to
Yeah,
pop up on like a top
it won't.
10 of anything. Um, well, Bree, one thing I always want to offer up on these is any questions you have for me. It could be a boomerang type question, something I asked you that you're wondering how I've done it, or something just financial related that you're thinking, have never really had a chance to ask someone this and kind of open it up in a public forum. So any questions you can think of?
Yeah, I think my biggest struggle right now is, hey, I've got a really decent savings where this money is just sitting. I dip into it very occasionally. I'm not looking to empty it in terms of investments, but I'm looking to do something with a decent chunk of it that could give me a really nice return or more than what I would make in, say, the 401k or a CD or something like that. But I'm also kind of an anxious, I don't like to risk my money. I'm not a gambler. I don't do any of that. I work really hard for what I bring home. And so I'm kind of curious what your input is in terms of, you know, are there things I should be doing that I'm not doing that would make it a much easier future for me in terms of what I'm saving or building that savings or my investments, things of that nature?
So I think in general, my take is that there's a lot of noise out there. You'll read about things. There's a lot of awful online advice via social media. And there's always a hustle out there too, trying to sell you the next big, brightest thing. So the 401k should be really like the plain vanilla, very boring thing that you're young, you got a lot of time, it's going to be higher risk. There'll be good years, there'll be bad, it will average out and be fine. And the ideal scenario from a tax planning standpoint, as you go through the next 30 years, is if you can have some money in your pre-tax 401k, that's like what your employer matches and maybe what you've deferred to date. You maybe have some money in the Roth portion as well, where you've paid the taxes and it's already that way you have some flexibility depending on the year you take it out. And what you're really asking is the other end of that is getting outside of the employer plan. What might I want to do? Emergency savings is kind of key, is to have that. And it sounds like you have that taken care of. But typically people will look at, maybe 3 to 6 months of salary. And I think it depends on type of job you have and your likelihood to become disabled in that job or have time off, that sort of thing. If you have money above and beyond that, then frequently people will open up a brokerage account. And what I would say is it's not as if you're investing more aggressively or differently in a brokerage account as you would the 401k. It's probably one and the same. It's going to have the same volatility, but that you hinted at you're not real comfortable with gambling, and the time in the market is still the most basic key thing. So you could put in that money, and let's say you had an extra $10,000 and you put it in a brokerage account. And you said, okay, I'm going to buy the SPY exchange trade fund that just tracks all big US companies that are in the S&P 500. There's going to be years that will be great. So the last 2 years, for instance, that would have been awesome for you. Just the year prior in 2022, if you would have started at the beginning of 2022, you probably would have had about, you know, I don't know, lost about 20% at different points in time during the year. So it's not as if there's a free ride. And to me, the time horizon is really what matters and what you're planning for. So I don't have a great answer other than to say, if you can layer and have these different types of accounts, that's number one. Make sure you're on target and saving enough. That's number two. And then the third piece would be, in terms of that risk, evaluating what sorts of ups and downs you're really willing to take. So it's not as if there's a single security or something like that I'd tell you to move into. If anything, I'm still kind of a boring plain guy where it's like low cost, passively managed. That's going to be the ticket. But I think that the way you could manage that too is through having small bits and chunks go in on a regular basis. So you're kind of getting the averages of highs and lows over that time frame. And this is what I do. I've done this since, right out of school, and it's exactly what I do in my personal life as well.
Okay.
So having all those different things stacked up, so it just provides a lot of flexibility from that end.
Okay. And then the other question I have is, I've considered selling my place, but I've also considered renting it for, when I move in with my boyfriend. And so I'm trying to figure out kind of what's the best route in terms of, should I hang on to the home? Should I rent it? Should I sell it?
So on something like that, I think you want to spreadsheet out the equity you have in the place, what sort of maintenance costs you have. And that's the one thing that you mentioned, like you didn't like having a roommate. There was a point here where I owned a townhouse in DC, and we had a basement rental unit that was separate. And at a certain point, having renters can be a real pain too. So, you have to factor in the good and the bad, the amount of time that you potentially would be having to, not have a tenant in there, maybe ongoing maintenance, factor all of that in, comparing that with what you could get if you just sold it off and maybe funded a brokerage account with the proceeds from that. You probably, from a return standpoint, there's going to be years where that real estate would do really well for you. There'll be years where the brokerage account would be really good for you. But in terms of having liquidity, you can sell that stock right away. You can't just turn around and sell that house right away. So there's some people that are really comfortable with owning a lot of properties and managing them and renting that out, but it's not exactly a one-to-one comparison. Just from a dollars and cents standpoint, you have to factor in your time, effort, and energy that rental property would involve as well. And probably for a more specific answer, where it's somebody we take offline and kind of delve into a few more questions. All right. So the past few of these, what I've done is I've finished with a lyric that tied into music. I always thought there's so many good songs about money. And since I didn't know who your favorite musician was, and ChatGPT only got 50% of the way correct, I figured, and I'm going to date myself here, I've thought I'd go to Lafayette's, native son, Axl Rose. And Guns N' Roses did not have a lot of lyrics about money, but the song My Michelle had this lyric: so come on, stop your crying, we both know money burns, honey, don't stop trying and you'll get what you deserve. So I guess the context would be pretty cynical take by Axl Rose there, that talking about short-term nature of money and the idea that one's actions and efforts will ultimately lead to what they deserve. So kind of a cynical take on wealth and effort by Axl there, but something that I wanted to bring into the talk. But kind of finishing up, just thank you very much for your time and your participation on the call. I'd say keep up the good work with what you're doing. Keep saving with every future pay increase and try to avoid that lifestyle creep. And so for everyone listening, until next time, keep saving and move along your jagged path. Thanks, Bri.